Hi, my name is Brandon Johnson. I am a Frisco High School senior. This is my second year in ISM. And I would like to start with a wonderful analogy that I learned from watching a video by a man named Simon Sinek. And I promise it's very relevant to my presentation. People do not buy what you do, but they buy why you do it. The human brain is broken down into three components. The Homo sapien part, the neocortex, which is responsible for rational and analytic thought and language. This is what you would call the what. The what am I buying, what am I voting for, what am I here for? So when people, when marketers, when politicians, when speakers are trying to persuade you to do something, to vote for them, to buy what they have, and they speak about the what, it sounds very logical, but that doesn't make you want to buy it, or that it doesn't make you want to vote for them. That may make you want to consider other options. But the two limbic sections, what some people would call sort of primitive, they control human behavior and feelings, but they have no capacity for language. So that means that when you speak to that area, it doesn't matter about your numbers or statistics, but if you discuss why you want to do something, then that person with no reason or no logic behind it may say, I want to buy that product, or I want to vote for this person, or I am persuaded by this person because it feels right. It's a gut feeling. And it is the why that brings people to your corner. And that is not my quote, by the way, but this is really something that my mentor showed me, and I really learned, loved watching it, and I really learned about it. And this is kind of why I did not only ISM, but why I did the product that I chose to do. So why ISM is, I guess, the first why that I'm going to be talking about today. And as a second year student, I asked myself this question a lot. But then I also asked myself, why not? Why not take a challenge? Why not work hard in your last year of high school, even though you could take a few breaks? And I asked myself this question because that was really important to me. But if someone, or if myself, if I came at myself with, oh, you need to have your GPA at this certain point, you need to have these certain numbers to get into college, that would probably not have persuaded me to continue to work hard. But because I came at myself with the why, and I went to that part of the brain that said, what do you feel? What do you believe? Then that allowed me to want to do ISM and to commit to it with in the second year with more passion than I ever have before. So I wanted to study global finance because as I researched and as I just would read about things on the news networks and read about the articles titled "The Next Biggest Jobs," global finance and anything having to do with finance was very big, and that is because everybody across the world has to learn and has to have some sort of skill with how capital and money and finances transfer from as big as one country to another to one person from one person to another. And this process of global finance is a very big umbrella, and it encompasses the process of conducting financial analysis, financial advising, managing and growing corporate resources, and providing financial services on a global scale. So before we really dive into the research, into the products, into the original work, in ISM we're required to do a career outlook assessment. And this really gives you basic knowledge on the career that you're going to be studying, or in some cases, when people really latch on to a type of career field, this is the kind of a basic summary of what you're going to be getting into. So the field of finance is expected to grow by 16% by the year 2020. The median salary is $76,950. The salary is flexible depending on the field, so whether you're in professional services, which I will talk about a lot more later, whether you're an accountant, whether you're the CFO for a company, that varies widely. However, despite the sharp uptick in growth in the past that will happen in the future 10 years from now, this field is very, very competitive to get into. So you can't just walk in and say, I want to do finance. You have to have the proper skills, and you have to really network to the proper people. And this knowledge of finance, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to study it, is very valuable in today's job market. So even if you are, let's say, a lawyer, if you have the knowledge of finance, that would make you way more in demand than just knowing the knowledge of the law. So the first semester as a second-year student was very different from the last year that I did. It was actually tougher because I was learning a new topic of study. I pretty much had to dive in by myself and figure out what am I going to do with finance, and then what would turn into later global finance. I really had to learn how to network and build contacts. Last year when I was studying appellate litigation, it was a lot easier to find these contacts because lawyers are always online, lawyers are always looking for business. But it was not as easy to do that this year with studying finance. I can't just look somebody up and say, oh, this person is finance, here's their name and number, I can call them. I had to actually go to the business symposium, which I'll talk about later, and actually connect with these people, speak with them, shake some hands, and build a pretty nice portfolio of contacts. And like I said before, it was very hard to find the 5 interviews required before I can pick a mentor in the field of finance, because you don't just find these people all over the place. So the business symposium, as I referenced before, was held at the FHS Administration Building in Frisco. It featured over 100 professionals in a variety of different fields. So this experience was very valuable because I got to interact with a multitude of professionals, people who were lawyers, doctors, people who were CFOs, CEOs of different companies. I even got to interview with a motivational speaker. And these people that I got to meet with were very extraordinary, and I was so glad for the opportunity to do it again. But this symposium, as I mentioned before, was even more valuable to me than it was last year, because I got to, and I was really forced to interact with these people in a totally different way, and I was forced to step out of my comfort zone and to speak with them and get their contact information. So one of the biggest parts of the SciSum journey is research. Even before you get into the original work and the final product, which also require research, you have to do a certain level of research, which is in the form of research assessments, to help kind of guide you down the path that you want to go down when you're doing your original work or your final product. And the first subject that I was really interested in, and it was brought to me by Coach Goff, my ISM teacher, was the subject of a Roth IRA. I had no idea what this is or what this was, and it was very enticing to me to really want to find out. So a Roth IRA is an account that is available to all Americans. It allows you to invest your first taxed income into the account, but after the initial investment, the money inside of that account grows untaxed. You can withdraw any contributions without any penalties, and you can leave the money in the account as long as you like. So when I found these facts, this was very fascinating. And the more I researched it, I figured out, wow, as a young person, whenever I do get that new job, get that first job, I can put the money that I have not just into a savings account where it just sits there and it acts as more of a cushion, but I can actually grow the capital that I acquire over my lifetime. And I think that was a very valuable skill as far as personal finance that I was able to learn. The next subject that I wanted to study, and it's very important to me, was the subject of income inequality. Over the past really 2 decades, income inequality has grown sharply. Now, income inequality is the gap between the top 1% of Americans and the bottom 99% of Americans. Now, it is healthy for this gap to exist, as the top 1% of earners in America are definitely going to make more money than the bottom 99%. But what is not healthy is for the gap to be as large as it is today. And I really kind of had to, when you look at this problem, you have to figure out, or try to make an attempt to figure out what you can do about that. I was inclined to support a Keynesian economic view where we have a progressive tax system and we make sure that we channel our focus and our financial energy as on a government level toward the middle class to help build them up. But we can't just attack it in that one way. And I also researched free enterprise capitalism, where we allow the market to continue to produce. And some people believe that that will truly grow the middle class. And so as our generation is forced to deal with that issue on a larger scale when we grow older, our officials in government must recognize that there isn't just one way to solve this issue, that we have to come together and solve it before it is too late. Now, the next topic that I studied, and this really directed me toward doing what I did for my original work, was the phenomena at the time of the steeply dropping gas prices. They dropped from, as far as the oil barrel number, they dropped from $100 per barrel to around $40 per barrel in the span of 4 months. The initial effects at home that I was able to look at, they were great. Many Americans saved so much money on gas. The consumer confidence went up, which is a real linchpin in our economy, which is consumer driven. But abroad, they had mixed results. I was able to learn that Western Europe was very, kind of had an allergic reaction to this drop because of their own rapid deflation. And countries that are part of OPEC really suffered, not just Saudi Arabia, who I will talk about later in my original work, but the other countries who depend on that oil revenue to meet their basic government functioning needs were really struck by this sharp drop. And recently, gas prices have slightly rebounded, but due to a multitude of economic factors, which I'll again talk about later in my original work, the prices, although they have stabled and slightly rebounded, they will probably not get to the highs that we saw where it is $100 per barrel in a very long time. And then another topic that I wanted to study and that was really interesting me was the state of our current economy. Now it is at 5.5%, but at the time that I researched this topic, it was at 5.8%. Consumer confidence was at its highest level since 2007. Inflation remained low at 1.7%. The economy averaged 200,000 jobs per month by adding those jobs into the labor force. But what I really found, and the reason why most Americans were not feeling this recovery, was that the median incomes had only risen by 1.1%. And that was a very key factor as to why, for a very long time until recently, that whenever news places would do different polls on how Americans are feeling about the economy, the numbers weren't great. Many Americans thought it was good, but they didn't really know if it would get better. They were pretty uncertain, and a lot of Americans said it's still not very good. The solution that I believed that could fix it was by raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour and indexing that with inflation. But that may not be the sole source of how we're going to get these median incomes to rise again quickly. So as a government and as a society, we have to make sure that we continue to have our median incomes going up, so that as the prices get higher, average Americans can still not only afford to buy their necessities, but we can still maintain the standard of living that we're used to. Another topic that I was very interested in studying was the Federal Reserve Board program of quantitative easing. And so what that program was, that program came about after the stock market crash in 2008. And the Federal Reserve Board, what they did was they bought high-risk bonds to help lure investors back into the market, so that investors really were able to play in the stock market, but the bonds and the stocks that they were buying were not as risky, where there wasn't a huge margin between reward and losses. This policy worked, and the stock market increased by 129%. Its overall capacity grew sharply. The Dow Jones even hit a high of 18,000. But the question among many economists was, how long should we have kept this? We ended up keeping it for 6 years. And what is the future after the quantitative easing program? Will the stock market return to normal, or will it suffer a sharp drop? And what we've seen over the past year, the past couple of months, is that we've done reasonably well after quantitative easing, but we still have really a long ways to go to see what were the effects of quantitative easing and how quantitative easing affect our economy. So what I learned from my research was that income inequality is a persistent problem that is really affecting our economy. I learned about the effects of dropping gas prices at home and abroad, and how it's not always good. I learned that stagnant wages are also a problem in the United States, and that the minimum wage is a possible route that we could to help bolster growing wages. I learned that a Roth IRA is very beneficial. I learned of its existence, but I also learned how beneficial it was, especially to young people. And I learned how what quantitative easing was and how it could affect us in the long term. So another big part of the ISM journey is the interviews that we are required to do before we can pick a mentor. And this process really helps us get out into the professional world, figure out which type of mentor we would want, what that mentor does, and how that relates to the topic of study that we're interested in, and how how what they do, their expertise can really help you grow as an ISM student. So this process is very important. The first person I interviewed was Tom Briscoe. I had a very hard time, as I mentioned earlier, finding candidates to interview because I couldn't just find their numbers online. So Mr. Briscoe was referred to me by Coach Goff, and that was the interview that I was able to set up. And so then what we were able to do was I was able to go to his office and meet with him. He was the chief administrative officer, and so what he really did was he was the person who, and very similar to my mentor, who I'll talk about a little later, was the person who brought the pieces all together. He worked with the CFOs and the CEO to make sure that all the components of their company, Allen Knight and Associates, was coming together and was working not only strong as far as profits, but was continuing to work as far as efficiency. And what he really taught me was that people, human capital, are the most important resource that a company can have. When you are, as a leader of a company, when you are in line with your human capital, when you're responding to their needs, when you have them making good wages for their jobs and their job placement, that really helps them continue to work for you, not just for the money, but for the passion. That is the part that is the why. Why should they want to work for you? So if you make sure and you treat them, your human capital, your employees, as the most important resource, they will work for you with their blood, sweat, tears, and their passion. The second interview that I had was with Bob Straight, and I acquired his contact information through the business symposium. I met a man, and he was also in finance, but he had a friend, and I got his number, and he had a friend that he wanted me to meet with, and that he thought that as a person wanting to study finance, that this interview would be very beneficial to me. So when I got his contact information, we were actually able to meet at Starbucks. It was a very relaxed environment, and we talked about a lot of things, and I was able to learn a lot. But the biggest thing that I was able to learn from Mr. Straight was to learn how to listen to people. He was a financial advisor, and so one of his main roles was just learning how to listen to what his client wants and what they want for their financial future. And so learning how to listen to people was very, very important. The third interview that I was able to have was with Tim O'Neill. He was a certified public accountant, and so I had never really studied accounting before. I'd never really been exposed to that field, but when I talked to him, it was a very interesting place. All over the board there were numbers and so many formulas and equations all over the place. I felt like I was in math class, but it was very interesting to meet with him and to learn about the accounting profession. What I learned from him was to aim for high goals and relentlessly pursue them. This really stuck with me throughout my second year of ISM and continued to help me strive for more out of my second year. And it really helped me kick into gear and stay focused in my second year. My mentor here in Shukla was my fourth interview. And what I really learned from him was to think of business and finance on a global perspective. This really led me to change the title of what I'm studying to global finance, because through this interview and also through the research and the final product that I've done, I've been able to realize just how globalized our finance and our business and our economy is as a whole. I really learned that the things that happen in Asia, their economy, it can affect our economy as well. The things that happen in Europe can affect the economy in South America. So I really learned just how interconnected we are as a global economy. My last interview was with Steve Wingard. He was a very interesting person because he was I later learned from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. So he was a very smart person. He worked in finance as well. He was referred to me by Tom Briscoe, and what I really learned from him was to remember special people. The people that I met through ISM have been really special to me. They have continued to teach me things. I've been able to learn from them, and I've been able to use what I've learned from them to work harder in ISM and then to build myself toward the future. So my mentor is here in Shukla. He works at Ernst & Young, and this is a consulting firm who deals in professional services, which I will talk about later. But he is the leader of the Core Business Services Group. And so what they do is, across the world, when a company needs a service, such as they may need their taxes filed, they may need some research and analysis if they're expanding globally as to what the state of the economy is in the country that they're expanding to, and they provide that service toward their client. This type of work was really the center of my final product, and I grew to see professional services as sort of the map that we use to take when we're navigating the world of global finance. It's really how we bring it all together. He has had 17 years of experience with Ernst & Young. He received his accounting degree from the City University of New York. So this is my original work overview. This is what I really wanted to learn, and how I broke it down into sections, and this really helped me have an effective original work that I can not only learn from, but that I can teach you guys as the audience. It was really, the original work was based on my research about falling oil prices, and I broke it down into 5 phases, and I had a similar breakdown for my final product. The first part was gathering the research material, so not only what I researched in the past, but doing even more research as to why the gas prices have been dropping so far as they have, and what truly are the effects on not just our economy, not just big named economies such as China and the European Union, but other countries across the world. And the second phase was to map out my original work on a diagram into 4 different parts, which I'll discuss later. But this mapping out process really gave me a visual aid, and it really allowed me to learn about the process of how I'm going to do this original work. Breaking this part down allowed me to just have another visual perspective about how I'm going to do this, and it helped to be more organized and more thorough. And the third phase was to obviously complete the 4-part original work. Phase 4 was to combine it into a presentable format, which was PowerPoint. And the last phase was to write policy initiatives. Now, this policy initiative part really came to me as I was finishing up the other 4 parts of my original work. And when I was learning about all the problems and all the reasons as to why gas prices fell, I learned that the biggest reason was the instability of oil in our world. And I learned that we have to be able to do something. And so what I did was, this is not real legislation, but these were kind of just rough, policies that I could think of to help stabilize gas prices, at least domestically, and help America gain more energy independence.